The coffee was burning her tongue, but Amelia Reed didn't care. She needed something, anything, to keep her eyes open after the 18-hour flight. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and dark circles had formed under her sea-green eyes. The airport buzzed with early morning travelers, their voices creating a symphony of chaos that matched her exhausted mind. Amelia glanced at her watch, 6:15 in the morning, and suppressed a groan. She still had a 40-minute drive home and a presentation to prepare for tomorrow. Final boarding call for Flight 307 to Chicago. The announcement blared overhead, causing Amelia to jolt. She gathered her belongings hastily, stuffing her sketchbook into her bag and grabbing what she thought was her laptop case from the chair beside her. The weight felt right, the black leather exterior identical to her own. Why wouldn't it be hers? She had been the only one at that section of the waiting area for the past hour. The sun was rising over the cityscape as Amelia finally unlocked the door to her modest apartment. Plants of every variety greeted her, her faithful companions, and the inspiration behind her landscape design career. At 26, she had already made a name for herself with her innovative, sustainable garden designs. This recent trip to Seattle had been to present concepts for an eco-friendly community park. The clients had loved her ideas, and a contract was practically guaranteed. Amelia kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto her couch, fighting the urge to fall asleep immediately. She needed to review her notes and polish her presentation for another potential client tomorrow. With a deep sigh, she unzipped the laptop case and pulled out the computer. Something felt off. The sleek, silver device in her hands didn't have the small coffee stain in the corner that her laptop had acquired last winter. Nor did it have the Save the Bees sticker she had proudly displayed on the cover. This wasn't her laptop. "Oh, no, no, no," she whispered, panic rising in her throat as she opened the device. It powered on immediately, requesting a password she didn't have. The background image showed a corporate logo she didn't recognize, Montgomery Sustainable Developments. Amelia's heart raced. She had somehow taken someone else's laptop, which meant someone else had hers. With all her designs, client information, and the presentation she needed for tomorrow. She ran her fingers through her hair, trying to think clearly despite her exhaustion. After 20 minutes of searching online, she found the website for Montgomery Sustainable Developments, a high-end real estate development company known for its environmentally conscious buildings. Without giving herself time to reconsider, she dialed the company's main number. "Montgomery Sustainable Developments, how may I direct your call?" A polished voice answered. "Hi, this is going to sound strange, but I think I accidentally picked up someone's laptop at the airport this morning. Someone from your company," Amelia explained, her words tumbling out quickly. There was a pause. "I see. May I ask who's calling?" "Amelia Reed. I'm a landscape designer. I just flew in from Seattle, and I must have mixed up laptop cases with someone at the airport. One moment, please." The hold music played for what felt like eternity before a different voice came on the line. Male, crisp, and distinctly unfriendly. "This is Dennis Parker, executive assistant to Mr. Jackson Montgomery. You claim to have Mr. Montgomery's laptop?" The tone made Amelia feel like a criminal. "I don't claim anything. I accidentally took a laptop that isn't mine, and it has your company logo on it. I'm trying to do the right thing here." "How convenient," Dennis replied, his skepticism evident. "And what exactly are you hoping to gain from this call, Miss Reed?" "Gain? I'm hoping to return this laptop to its owner and get mine back. That's all. Mr. Montgomery reported his laptop missing this morning. It contains highly sensitive company information. How do we know you haven't accessed this information?" Amelia's exhaustion gave way to irritation. "Because it requires a password, which I obviously don't have. Look, I don't care about your company secrets. I just want my laptop back. It has all my work on it. I'll need to discuss this with Mr. Montgomery. Please hold." Before Amelia could protest, she was placed on hold again. 5 minutes later, Dennis returned. "Miss Reed, we need to verify your story. Where exactly are you located? Amelia hesitated, suddenly uncomfortable with providing her address to someone so suspicious of her intentions. I'd rather not give my home address. We can meet somewhere public. That's not acceptable. For all we know, you could be attempting some form of corporate espionage. Corporate espionage? Amelia couldn't contain a laugh of disbelief. I design gardens, Mr. Parker. I have zero interest in whatever is on this laptop. But right now, someone has mine, and I need it back. The line went silent for a moment. Then there was the sound of muffled conversation. When Dennis spoke again, his tone had shifted slightly. Mr. Montgomery would like to speak with you directly. Before Amelia could respond, a new voice came on the line. Deeper, authoritative, but with an unexpected warmth underneath the professional veneer. Miss Reed? Jackson Montgomery here. I understand you have my laptop. Something about his voice made Amelia stand up straighter, despite being alone in her apartment. Yes, and you presumably have mine. Black case, MacBook with a bee conservation sticker on it? That's correct. I discovered the mix-up when I arrived at my office this morning. He paused. I apologize for my assistant's approach. We've had issues with information security in the past. I understand, Amelia said, though she didn't entirely. I'm just anxious to get my laptop back. I have a presentation tomorrow that I need to prepare for. As do I, Jackson replied. Can we arrange to meet today? The sooner we exchange our property, the better for both of us. They agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown at noon. Amelia gave herself just enough time for a quick shower, changing into fresh clothes, dark jeans, a green blouse that complemented her eyes, and a light blazer. Professional, but casual. She didn't know why she cared how she looked for this brief exchange, but something about Jackson Montgomery's voice had intrigued her. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd when Amelia arrived, precisely at 12 o'clock. She scanned the room, unsure of how she would recognize Jackson Montgomery. Then she spotted a man in the corner, wearing an impeccably tailored suit, dark hair neatly styled, his attention focused on his phone. The laptop case beside him was identical to the one she carried. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met across the room, and Amelia felt an unexpected jolt of recognition, though she was certain they had never met before. He stood as she approached, revealing his impressive height. At least 6 feet tall, she estimated. "Miss Reed?" he asked, extending his hand. "Mr. Montgomery," she confirmed, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, but not overpowering. Up close, Jackson Montgomery was even more striking. Sharp jawline, intense blue eyes that studied her with open curiosity, and the faintest hint of stubble that somehow added to his polished appearance rather than detracting from it. Amelia was suddenly very aware of her still damp hair and the dark circles under her eyes that even concealer couldn't fully hide. "Please, sit," he offered, gesturing to the chair across from him. "I took the liberty of ordering coffee. I hope that's all right." "Perfect, actually. I could use the caffeine," Amelia replied, setting the laptop case on the table between them. Jackson slid her laptop case toward her. "I believe this belongs to you." "And this to you," she said, pushing his case across the table. Their fingers briefly touched during the exchange, and Amelia was surprised by how that simple contact made her pulse quicken. Jackson opened his case, examining the contents. Everything seems to be in order, though his brow furrowed as he dug deeper into the case. "The USB drive isn't here." "USB drive? I didn't see any USB drive," Amelia said, opening her own case to check that everything was there. "It's a small black drive. It was in the front pocket of the case." Jackson's voice had tensed, the warmth from earlier evaporating. "It contains all the presentation files for my meeting tomorrow." Amelia shook her head. "I didn't take anything out of the case. Maybe it fell out at the airport during the mix-up." Jackson's expression darkened. "That drive contains months of work, proprietary designs and confidential client information. If someone else finds it, we should go back to the airport," Amelia suggested. "Right away. It might still be there, at the lost and found, Or maybe it's still where we were sitting. Jackson checked his watch. I have meetings all afternoon, and I have a presentation tomorrow that I can't prepare for if you're going to accuse me of stealing your USB drive, Amelia countered, surprising herself with her boldness. Their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Jackson sighed. You're right. This is my problem, not yours. I apologize for implying— No, I want to help, Amelia interrupted. I was the one who took your laptop by mistake. Let me help you find the drive. Something shifted in Jackson's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, my driver is outside. We can go to the airport now. The ride to the airport was mostly silent. Amelia stole glances at Jackson as he made calls, rescheduling his afternoon meetings with terse efficiency. She couldn't help but notice how his presence filled the spacious back seat of the town car, how his cologne, subtle but distinctly masculine, made the air seem thinner somehow. When they arrived at the airport, Jackson insisted on accompanying her to the terminal where she had been that morning. The waiting area was crowded now, every seat filled with travelers. It was over there. Amelia pointed to a section of chairs near a large window. I was sitting alone for a while. Then you must have sat down nearby. They approached the area, searching around and beneath the seats. Nothing. Let's check with Lost and Found, Jackson suggested, his voice tight with concern. The Lost and Found office was staffed by a woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and a name tag that read, Margaret. She listened patiently to their story. A small black USB drive, you say? Let me check what's been turned in today. While Margaret searched through her catalog of found items, Amelia noticed Jackson's posture. Rigid, hands clasped behind his back, jaw clenched. This drive clearly meant a great deal to him. You mentioned it has presentation files, she said quietly. What kind of presentation? Jackson glanced at her, seemingly surprised by her interest. A proposal for a new type of sustainable residential community. Green buildings integrated with natural landscapes. He paused. Actually, somewhat similar to what you do, I imagine. That sounds fascinating, Amelia said sincerely. Is that what your company specializes in? It's a new direction we're exploring. For the first time since discovering the missing drive, Jackson's expression softened slightly, combining luxury housing with environmental responsibility. I'm sorry, folks, Margaret interrupted. We don't have any USB drives that match that description turned in today. Jackson's shoulders tensed again. Is there anywhere else it might have been taken if someone found it? You could check with the airlines Lost and Found as well, Margaret suggested. Sometimes items are turned in to gate agents. As they walked toward the airline counter, Amelia noticed Jackson checking his watch repeatedly. Your meetings, she remembered. You should go. I can keep looking and call you if I find anything. No, he said firmly. This is too important. The presentation is tomorrow morning, and without those files— He didn't finish the sentence, but the gravity was clear in his expression. At the airline counter, they were told no USB drives had been turned in that morning. Jackson's frustration was palpable as they walked away. Let's retrace your steps, Amelia suggested. After you realized you had the wrong laptop, what did you do? Jackson thought for a moment. I went to the restroom before leaving the airport. Then I took a call near the baggage claim area. They methodically checked each location, finding nothing. Defeat was setting in when Amelia had another thought. What about airport security? The drive might have fallen out when your case went through the scanner. It was a long shot, but they made their way to the security checkpoint. The TSA officer they spoke with seemed dubious, but agreed to check with his colleagues. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as they waited. You don't have to stay, Jackson told Amelia. You've already been more than helpful. I want to see this through, she replied simply. Besides, I'm invested now. I want to know if we find it. Jackson studied her with that same curious expression from the coffee shop. You're not what I expected, Amelia Reed. Before she could ask what he meant, the TSA officer returned, holding a small black USB drive. Is this what you're looking for? The relief on Jackson's face was transformative. The stern businessman suddenly looked years younger, almost boyish in his excitement. Yes, thank you. Outside the security area, Jackson turned to Amelia, the USB drive safely tucked in his pocket. I don't know how to thank you. No need, she assured him. I'm just glad we found it. Let me at least buy you dinner. It's the least I can do after you spent your entire afternoon helping me, especially after my company initially treated you with suspicion. Amelia hesitated. The rational part of her brain reminded her that she needed to prepare for her own presentation tomorrow. But there was something about Jackson Montgomery that made her curious to know more. Dinner would be nice, she found herself saying. Jackson smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and changed his entire demeanor. Excellent. I know just the place. As they walked back toward the exit, Amelia's phone rang. The caller ID showed Martha Sullivan, her former professor and mentor. I should take this, she told Jackson, then answered, Hi, Martha. How are you? Amelia, dear. I'm wonderful. I was just calling to check how your Seattle presentation went. It went really well, thank you. The clients seemed very impressed with the sustainable water feature designs you helped me develop. I knew they would be. You were always my most promising student, Martha said warmly. Actually, I'm calling because my brother mentioned he's looking for a landscape designer for a new project. I immediately thought of you. That's so kind of you to recommend me, Amelia replied, glancing at Jackson, who was checking emails on his phone a few steps away. His name is Jackson Montgomery. He runs a development company here in the city. Have you heard of him? Amelia froze, her gaze snapping back to Jackson. Montgomery? As in Montgomery Sustainable Developments? That's the one. Do you know him? Jackson looked up at the mention of his company name, his expression quizzical. Martha, Amelia said slowly. Is your brother's name Jackson? Yes, that's right. Do you know him already? You could say that, Amelia replied, a smile spreading across her face as she locked eyes with Jackson. In fact, he's standing right next to me. Wait, you're Martha Sullivan's brother? Amelia asked, her phone still pressed to her ear, disbelief coloring her voice. Jackson's expression shifted from confusion to surprise. Martha is your professor? The one you just mentioned? On the other end of the line, Martha was equally shocked. Amelia, you're with Jackson right now? How on earth did that happen? It's a long story, Amelia replied, unable to suppress a laugh at the coincidence. Apparently, the universe wanted us to meet before you could introduce us. Well, put me on speaker, Martha insisted. Amelia complied, holding the phone between herself and Jackson. Jackson, are you there? Martha called out. I'm here, Martha, he confirmed, his professional demeanor softening at his sister's voice. Your former student and I had a bit of an adventure today, involving mixed-up laptops. That sounds like the beginning of a romantic comedy, Martha chuckled. Well, this saves me the trouble of arranging an introduction. Amelia is exactly the landscape designer I was telling you about for your new riverfront project. Jackson's eyes found Amelia's, a new interest flickering in their blue depths. Is that so? Well, her reputation precedes her then. Reputation? Amelia asked. Martha has been singing your praises for months, Jackson explained. I just never made the connection between my brilliant former student Amelia and Amelia Reed, landscape designer. Don't let me interrupt whatever you two are doing, Martha said, the smile evident in her voice. But Jackson, do consider Amelia for the project. And Amelia, don't let my brother's serious demeanor fool you. He's actually quite nice once you get past the CEO facade. I'll keep that in mind, Amelia replied, watching as Jackson's expression shifted between amusement and mild embarrassment. After promising Martha they would both call her soon, Amelia ended the call and tucked her phone away. So, she said, your sister was my mentor in college. She's the reason I became a landscape designer. And apparently, she's been trying to get us to work together, Jackson added. Martha has excellent instincts about people. She always has. They stood there for a moment, the busy airport continuing its hurried rhythm around them, but somehow it felt like they were in their own bubble of calm. "I believe I promised you dinner," Jackson finally said. "Shall we?" Jackson's driver took them to an elegant restaurant nestled in the historic district of the city. With its warm lighting, exposed brick walls, and abundance of indoor plants cascading from hanging planters, the space immediately put Amelia at ease. "This place is beautiful," she commented as they were led to a quiet table in the corner. "I love all the greenery." "I thought you might appreciate it," Jackson replied. "The owner is committed to sustainable practices. All the produce is locally sourced, and they grow many of their herbs right here in the restaurant." The waiter arrived with menus and a wine list. Jackson ordered a bottle of red wine after briefly consulting with Amelia about her preferences. "So," he began once they were alone again, "tell me how you came to study under my sister. Martha doesn't mentor just anyone." "It was actually by chance," Amelia explained, relaxing into her chair. "I was originally an architecture student, but I was struggling with the rigid structural aspects. During a particularly frustrating evening in the studio, I escaped to the campus gardens and started sketching. Martha found me there and saw my drawings. She suggested I consider landscape design instead, a way to create spaces that blend structure with natural elements." "That sounds like Martha," Jackson smiled. "She's always had a knack for redirecting people toward their true talents." "She changed my life," Amelia admitted. "Without her guidance, I might have abandoned design altogether." The wine arrived, and they paused as the waiter poured 2 glasses. Jackson raised his in a small toast. "To fortunate meetings, both planned and unplanned." Amelia clinked her glass against his. "And to finding lost USB drives." They both laughed, and Amelia felt the last of the tension from their earlier crisis melting away. As they studied the menu, she couldn't help stealing glances at Jackson. In this softer lighting, away from the stress of the airport, he looked different, less the stern CEO and more like someone she might actually want to know better. "May I ask about your presentation?" she ventured after they had ordered. "The one on the USB drive we rescued." Jackson's expression brightened with genuine enthusiasm. "It's a new concept for sustainable communities. Most green developments focus on the buildings themselves, energy efficiency, solar panels, that sort of thing. But we're proposing a more holistic approach, where the natural landscape is as integral to the design as the structures." "That sounds exactly like what I try to achieve with my designs," Amelia said, leaning forward with interest. "Creating spaces where the boundary between built environment and nature blurs." "Precisely," Jackson nodded, his eyes alight with passion. "The problem is convincing investors that it's worth the additional upfront cost. Tomorrow's presentation is for a group of potential backers who could make or break the project." "No wonder you were so worried about the USB drive." "It wasn't just the files," Jackson admitted. "It was what they represent. This project is personal for me." "How so?" Jackson took a sip of his wine, seeming to consider how much to share. "My father built this company on traditional luxury developments, beautiful buildings, but not particularly environmentally conscious. When I took over 5 years ago, I wanted to shift our focus. This project is my chance to prove that luxury and sustainability aren't mutually exclusive." Their food arrived, a seasonal risotto for Amelia and herb-crusted salmon for Jackson. The conversation flowed easily as they ate, moving from professional aspirations to personal stories. Amelia told him about growing up with a mother who transformed their suburban backyard into a wildlife haven, planting the seeds of her future career. Jackson shared memories of accompanying Martha on nature walks as a child, collecting leaves and learning the names of birds while their father was busy with the business. "It sounds like you and Martha were close," Amelia observed. "We are," Jackson confirmed, "though we took very different paths. She chose academia, and I followed the family business tradition, but we've always understood each other." He paused, twirling his wine glass thoughtfully. "That's partly why I trust her judgment about you." Amelia felt a flush creeping up her neck that had nothing to do with the wine. "And what is your judgment, now that we've spent the day together?" Jackson's gaze was steady, assessing but not cold. "I think you're talented, dedicated, and surprisingly patient with cranky executives who accuse you of corporate espionage. Don't forget quick thinking under pressure and excellent at finding lost items," she added, with a teasing smile. "Those too," he agreed, returning her smile with one of his own. "In all seriousness, Amelia, I'd like to discuss the possibility of you working on the riverfront project Martha mentioned. After seeing how you handled today's crisis, I'm convinced she was right about you." "I'd like that," Amelia replied honestly. "Though I should warn you, I'm very particular about my designs. I don't compromise easily when it comes to environmental integrity." "That's exactly the kind of stubbornness this project needs." As dinner concluded, Amelia realized with surprise that nearly 3 hours had passed. The restaurant had emptied around them, but neither had noticed the time slipping away. "I should get home," she said reluctantly. "I still need to prepare for my presentation tomorrow." "Of course," Jackson nodded. "My driver can take you." Outside, the night air was cool and fragrant with spring blossoms. As they waited for the car, Jackson turned to her, his expression suddenly serious. "Amelia, I've enjoyed this evening far more than I anticipated. Would you consider having dinner again? Not as a potential business associate, but—" He hesitated, and Amelia was charmed to see a flash of uncertainty cross his usually confident face. "As a date?" The question caught her off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. There had been something building between them all evening, a connection that went beyond their professional interests or the strange circumstances of their meeting. "I'd like that," she answered simply. The drive to Amelia's apartment was quiet but comfortable. When they arrived, Jackson insisted on walking her to her door. "Thank you for today," he said, as they stood in the hallway outside her apartment. "What started as a disaster turned into one of the most enjoyable days I've had in a long time." "It was my pleasure," Amelia replied. "Good luck with your presentation tomorrow. Those investors would be fools not to back your project. And good luck with yours, though I'm sure you'll impress them." There was a moment of hesitation, a brief silence filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Jackson leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Good night, Amelia." "Good night, Jackson." Inside her apartment, Amelia leaned against the closed door, her cheek still tingling from his kiss. Her plants seemed to watch her with silent curiosity as she moved through the darkened space, unable to wipe the smile from her face. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Amelia prepared for her presentation with unusual energy, the memory of the previous day fueling her confidence. Her designs had never looked better, and she felt certain her potential clients would see the vision she was trying to create. She was about to leave when her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "Good luck today. I know you'll be brilliant. Would 7:30 tomorrow night work for dinner? Jackson." Amelia smiled, quickly saving his contact information and typing a reply. "Thank you. 7:30 is perfect. Good luck with your investors." The presentation went even better than she had hoped. The clients, a family wanting to transform their sprawling suburban property into a natural sanctuary, were enthusiastic about her designs and signed the contract on the spot. As she left their home, Amelia couldn't resist sending Jackson a quick update. "Presentation was a success. Contract signed. How did yours go?" His reply came almost immediately. "Congratulations. Mine just finished. The investors are in. We'll have plenty to celebrate tomorrow night." That evening, as Amelia was sorting through emails and planning her work schedule for the new project, her phone rang. It was her mother, Carol. "Hi, Mom," she answered warmly. "Amelia, dear, I haven't heard from you since you got back from Seattle. How did everything go?" "Really well," Amelia replied, settling onto her couch. "The Seattle clients loved the designs, and I just signed another contract today for the Peterson property." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Your father would have been so proud." The The mention of her late father brought a familiar pang of sadness, but it was gentler now. Softened by time and good memories, he had been the one who taught her to respect nature, to see gardens as living art. Actually, Mom, something else happened. I met someone. Someone? Or just a someone? Carol asked, her interest immediately piqued. Amelia laughed. A someone, I think. His name is Jackson Montgomery. He's a developer who specializes in sustainable buildings. Montgomery? As in Montgomery Sustainable Developments? I read about them in that home design magazine. Very impressive work. That's the one. And get this, he's Martha Sullivan's brother. Your Professor Martha? What a small world. How did you meet him? Amelia recounted the story of the laptop mix-up, the missing USB drive, and their surprising discovery of their connection through Martha. It sounds like fate, darling, Carol said when she had finished. Those kinds of coincidences don't just happen. Mom, you think everything is fate, Amelia teased, and I'm usually right. So, when are you seeing him again? Tomorrow night, for dinner. Well, wear that green dress, the one that brings out your eyes, and call me afterward. I want to hear everything. After promising to provide a full report, Amelia said good night and ended the call. Her mother's enthusiasm made her both amused and nervous. Was she getting ahead of herself? After all, it was just one dinner. Well, technically, their second, but their first official date. The following evening, Amelia took her mother's advice and wore the emerald green dress that complemented her auburn hair and eyes. She had just finished applying a touch of lipstick when her doorbell rang, precisely at 7:30. Jackson stood in the hallway, looking even more handsome than she remembered in a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his shirt casually undone. He held a small gift bag in one hand and a bouquet of wildflowers in the other. "These are for you," he said, offering the flowers. "Not roses or anything conventional. I thought these might speak more to your love of natural landscapes." Amelia was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. The wildflowers were beautiful, clearly chosen with care and arranged artfully. "They're perfect," she said sincerely, inviting him in while she found a vase. "And this," Jackson added, handing her the gift bag, "is a thank you for saving my presentation. The investors were very impressed, by the way. We got full funding." "Congratulations! That's wonderful news." Inside the bag was a small potted plant, not a common house plant, but a rare variety of fern with delicate lace-like fronds. "It's a maidenhair fern," Jackson explained. "The nursery owner told me they're challenging to grow, but I figured if anyone could nurture it, you could." Amelia gently touched one of the fronds. "It's beautiful. Thank you." As she arranged the wildflowers in a crystal vase, one of the few nice things she had inherited from her grandmother, Amelia felt Jackson's eyes on her. "You look stunning," he said simply. She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant he had chosen for tonight was different from their first dinner. Smaller, more intimate, with a magnificent rooftop garden where tables were set among flowering vines and small trees strung with twinkling lights. "This place is magical," Amelia breathed, as they were seated at a corner table overlooking the city. "I thought you'd appreciate it," Jackson replied. "The owner is a client of mine. She converted this old building using entirely sustainable methods. The garden actually helps insulate the building and reduces urban heat. Functional and beautiful." Amelia nodded approvingly. "The best kind of design." As they studied the menu, Amelia found herself stealing glances at Jackson. In just 2 days, he had gone from a stranger, and a rather intimidating one at that, to someone who felt somehow familiar, as if they had known each other much longer. "What?" he asked, catching her looking at him. "I was just thinking how strange it is," she admitted. "If I hadn't grabbed the wrong laptop, we might never have met. Or at least, not like this." "I believe we would have," Jackson said with surprising certainty. "If not through the laptop, then through Martha, or through our work." Some connections are just meant to happen. That sounds like something my mother would say, Amelia smiled. She's convinced our meeting was fate. Smart woman, your mother, Jackson replied, his eyes twinkling. I look forward to meeting her someday. The implication that there would be many more days, enough for meeting families and building something real, hung in the air between them, neither awkward nor presumptuous, but full of quiet promise. Under the canopy of stars and string lights, surrounded by growing things, they shared another meal together. This time, they spoke less of work and more of dreams, the places they hoped to visit, the legacy they wanted to leave, the kind of world they wanted to help create. With each passing hour, Amelia felt herself drawn deeper into Jackson's world, and he into hers. Two separate paths, gradually converging into one possible future. When Jackson took her hand across the table, his thumb gently tracing circles on her palm, Amelia knew with sudden clarity that her life had shifted course in that airport terminal. Not just her career with this potential new project, but her heart as well. "What are you thinking?" Jackson asked softly, noticing her momentary silence. Amelia looked up at him, at the face that had somehow become dear to her in such a short time. "I'm thinking that sometimes the best designs aren't the ones we plan, but the ones that surprise us." Jackson's smile deepened, reaching his eyes and crinkling the corners in a way that made Amelia want to trace them with her fingertips. "I couldn't agree more," he said, raising her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss against her knuckles. "To unexpected designs." And as the city lights twinkled below them, and the garden breathed its sweet fragrance around them, Amelia knew that whatever grew between them would be both carefully tended and wonderfully wild, like the best gardens always are. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of work and stolen evenings together. Amelia found herself falling into an easy rhythm with Jackson. Coffee before work when their schedules allowed, late dinners discussing their respective projects, and weekend walks through the city's botanical gardens where they would point out plants to each other like excited children sharing treasures. It was during one such walk, on a sunny Saturday morning, that Jackson first brought up the riverfront project in detail. "I'd like to show you the site," he said as they paused near a koi pond. "The property has been abandoned for years, an old industrial area along the river. Most developers see it as a wasteland, but I see potential." "Those are often the best kinds of sites," Amelia replied, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "Transformation, rather than imposition." Jackson smiled at her understanding. "Exactly. The city has given preliminary approval for the concept, but they're concerned about flood management and soil remediation. That's where your expertise would be invaluable." "I'd love to see it," Amelia said honestly. She had been curious about the project since Martha first mentioned it, but she and Jackson had been careful to keep their professional and personal lives somewhat separate as their relationship developed. "How about tomorrow? The light is best in the morning." "Tomorrow is perfect." The next morning, Jackson picked her up in his own car rather than sending his driver, a silver electric vehicle that hummed quietly through the Sunday morning streets. Amelia noticed how he relaxed behind the wheel, one hand resting lightly on the gear shift, the other confidently guiding the car through traffic. Without his usual suit, dressed instead in dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt, he looked younger and more carefree. "You seem different today," she observed. Jackson glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "Different good or different bad?" "Different good," she assured him. "More relaxed, in your element. I feel most like myself when I'm working on projects I truly believe in," he admitted. "The riverfront is special to me. It's the first development I've had complete creative control over since taking over the company." They drove out of the city center, past gradually thinning neighborhoods, until they reached an area that bore the faded signs of former industrial prosperity. Old brick warehouses stood alongside rusting metal structures, their windows broken or boarded up. But beyond them, Amelia caught glimpses of the river, sunlight dancing on its surface. Jackson parked near a chain-link fence with a no trespassing sign, then retrieved a set of keys from the glove compartment. "We own the property now, but we keep it secured to prevent vandalism," he explained, as he unlocked the gate. As they walked through, Amelia was struck by the contrast between abandonment and natural beauty. While the human-made structures were crumbling, nature had begun its quiet reclamation. Wildflowers pushed through cracks in the concrete, vines climbed the walls of old buildings, and birds nested in rusted beams. "It's amazing, isn't it?" Jackson said, watching her take it all in. "Most people see decay, but there's actually a kind of rebirth happening here." "I see it," Amelia nodded, bending to examine a cluster of purple flowers breaking through the pavement. "Nature is resilient. Given half a chance, it will always find a way back." They walked further into the property, and Jackson pointed out key features: the river frontage, the old warehouse he hoped to convert into the community center, the natural slope of the land that could be used for water management. As he spoke, Amelia could see the vision taking shape in her mind, not erasing what was here, but honoring it while creating something new. "What do you think?" he asked when they reached a small rise that offered a view of the entire site. "Be honest. If you hate it or think it's too challenging—" "I love it," Amelia interrupted, her eyes bright with excitement. "It's exactly the kind of project I've always wanted to work on. The challenges are real, but that's what makes it worthwhile." He turned to face him. "I want to be part of this, Jackson, not just because it's your project, but because it's important." Relief and joy spread across his face. "I was hoping you'd say that." He took her hands in his. "But I need you to know, this is your project too, if you take it on. Your name, your vision. I don't want you to ever feel like you're just executing my ideas." The sincerity in his eyes touched her deeply. In her previous jobs, Amelia had often found herself compromising her vision to satisfy clients who didn't truly understand or value sustainable design. Jackson was offering something rare: creative freedom backed by resources and shared values. "Partners, then," she said, squeezing his hands. "Partners," he agreed, and she knew he meant in more ways than one. They spent the next few hours walking the site, with Amelia taking notes and photos on her phone, occasionally stopping to sketch quick ideas in the small notebook she always carried. Jackson watched her work with evident admiration, offering information about soil conditions and zoning requirements, but never imposing his own solutions. It was past noon when they finally returned to the car, both hungry and pleasantly tired from the morning's exploration. "There's a small cafe not far from here," Jackson suggested. "Nothing fancy, but the food is good. My team and I often stop there when we're working in the area." The cafe was indeed simple, a family-run establishment with checked tablecloths and mismatched chairs. But the atmosphere was warm and welcoming. They were greeted by an older woman who clearly recognized Jackson. "Mr. Montgomery, we haven't seen you in weeks, and you've brought a friend today." Her eyes twinkled as she looked at Amelia. "Maria, this is Amelia Reed. She's a landscape designer who'll be working with us on the riverfront project. Amelia, this is Maria Cortez. She makes the best soup you'll ever taste." "You flatter an old woman," Maria laughed, but she looked pleased. "Come, sit. I'll bring you my special today. You both look like you could use a good meal after trudging around that dusty old site." As they settled at a corner table, Amelia smiled. "You've clearly made an impression here." "Maria's family has owned this cafe for 3 generations, Jackson explained. "When we first started surveying the area, other developers wanted to buy out all the local businesses for redevelopment. I made it clear that our plan includes preserving the existing community." "That's refreshing," Amelia said sincerely. "Too often, revitalization becomes a code word for displacement." "My father wouldn't have seen it that way," Jackson admitted, his expression growing more serious. "He believed in progress at any cost. We butted heads over it frequently before he retired." "Is that why this project is so personal for you?" Jackson nodded, absently turning his water glass. Partly, I'm trying to prove that development doesn't have to come at the expense of communities or the environment, that we can build something new while honoring what came before. Maria returned with 2 bowls of fragrant vegetable soup and a basket of fresh bread. As they ate, Jackson shared more about his relationship with his father, a complicated mix of respect, rebellion, and the gradual process of finding his own path. He built the company from nothing, Jackson said, started as a construction worker, and worked his way up to owning his own firm. I admire what he accomplished, but we see the world differently. He measures success in profits and square footage. I believe we need to consider the long-term impact of what we build. How does he feel about the direction you're taking the company? He's skeptical, but coming around. The sustainable projects we've completed have been financially successful, which is the metric he understands. This riverfront development is the real test, though. It's much larger in scale and ambition. No pressure, Amelia teased gently, trying to lighten his mood. Jackson smiled, the tension easing from his shoulders. Exactly. No pressure at all. After lunch, they thanked Maria and promised to return soon. Outside, the day had grown warmer, the spring sun high in a cloudless sky. "What would you like to do now?" Jackson asked. "We could head back to the city, or—" He hesitated, then continued. "I have a place not far from here, a small cabin by the lake. I go there sometimes when I need to think or work without distractions. We could stop by if you'd like." There was something vulnerable in the invitation, as if he was offering to show her a part of himself he didn't share with many people. "I'd love to see it," Amelia said. The cabin was about 20 minutes away, down a winding road that led away from the city and into increasingly wooded areas. When they finally turned onto a narrow gravel drive, Amelia caught her first glimpse of the lake through the trees, an expanse of blue water reflecting the spring sky. The cabin itself was modest, but beautifully designed, all natural wood and glass, with a wide deck that extended over the sloping ground toward the water. It seemed to grow from the landscape, rather than imposing upon it. "This is beautiful," Amelia said as they walked inside. The interior was open and airy, with simple, comfortable furniture and walls lined with books. "It was my grandfather's originally," Jackson explained. "He was a forester. When he passed away, he left it to Martha and me. She doesn't use it much, prefers her apartment in the city, so it's become my retreat." "It suits you," Amelia observed, noticing how Jackson moved through the space with easy familiarity, opening windows to let in the fresh air and lake scent. "Would you like something to drink? I keep some basics here." "Water is fine," she replied, drawn to the wall of windows overlooking the lake. Jackson joined her there a moment later, handing her a glass of water. They stood side by side, watching the sunlight play on the lake's surface and the gentle movement of trees in the breeze. "I come here when the city feels too confining," Jackson said quietly, "when I need to remember why I do what I do. It's easy to get caught up in meetings and budgets and forget the bigger purpose." Amelia understood completely. We all need those reminders. For me, it's my plants. Watching something grow from a tiny seed to something beautiful and alive, it keeps me grounded. Jackson turned to look at her, his expression open and unguarded in a way she hadn't seen before. "You know, I've never brought anyone here. Not even—" He trailed off, then seemed to reconsider his words. "This place has always been just for me." The admission touched Amelia deeply. She knew what it meant to share a personal sanctuary with someone else. "Thank you for showing me this part of your life." The moment hung between them, fragile and significant. Then Jackson set down his water glass and gently took hers, placing it beside his on a nearby table. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch light as if she were something precious. "Amelia," he said softly, her name a question and an answer at once. She moved closer in response, and his lips met hers in a kiss that felt like coming home to a place she'd never been before. His arms encircled her waist as hers wound around his neck, drawing him closer. The kiss deepened, a slow exploration that left them both breathless when they finally pulled apart. "I've been wanting to do that for days," Jackson admitted, his forehead resting against hers. "What took you so long?" Amelia teased, though she knew the answer. They had both been cautious, aware of how quickly their connection had formed, and conscious of the professional relationship they were developing alongside the personal one. Jackson laughed softly. "I was trying to be patient, to give us time. And now?" His eyes met hers, serious again. "Now I know that some things don't need to be rushed, but they shouldn't be delayed either. Not when they feel this right." They spent the afternoon by the lake, sometimes talking, sometimes content in shared silence. Jackson showed her his favorite reading spot beneath an old oak tree and the small garden he had planted near the cabin. Amelia offered suggestions for native plants that would thrive with minimal care, sketching quick designs in her notebook that made Jackson smile with appreciation. As the day began to wane, casting long shadows across the lawn, they reluctantly acknowledged it was time to return to the city. The drive back was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about their plans for the coming week. Jackson needed to meet with the architectural team to discuss the initial building concepts, while Amelia had client meetings for her ongoing projects. "Would you be free Wednesday evening?" Jackson asked as they neared her apartment building. "There's a sustainable design exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. One of my colleagues has a project featured, and I promised I'd attend the opening." "I'd love to," Amelia replied, already looking forward to it. When they reached her building, Jackson walked her to her door, as he always did. This time, though, their goodnight kiss lingered, filled with the new awareness between them. "Thank you for today," Amelia said when they finally separated, "for showing me the project site and your cabin. Both were special." "Thank you for seeing the potential in both," Jackson replied. "That's a rare gift, Amelia. The ability to see what could be, not just what is." After he left, Amelia moved through her apartment in a pleasant daze, watering her plants and preparing for the week ahead. When her phone rang, she wasn't surprised to see her mother's name on the screen. "Hello, Mom," she answered warmly. "There's my girl! I was beginning to think you'd forgotten your old mother. It's been so long since you called." "It's been 3 days," Amelia laughed. "Hardly an eternity. 3 days is plenty of time for developments. How are things with your handsome developer? That was your 3rd date on Friday, wasn't it?" "4th, actually," Amelia corrected, then added, "And we just spent today together, too." "Well, well," Carol's voice was knowing. "Things must be going well." Amelia couldn't help the smile that spread across her face. "They are. He's different from what I expected. When we first met, he seemed so serious and businesslike, but there's so much more to him." "The best ones always have hidden depths," Carol said sagely. "Your father was the same way. Everyone saw the straight-laced accountant, but I knew the man who would dance with me in the kitchen and name every star in the sky." The comparison gave Amelia pause. She had never thought to compare any man to her father, whose loss still ached even after 5 years. But there was something about Jackson's quiet integrity that did remind her of him. "I'm going to be working with him professionally," she told her mother. "On that riverfront project I mentioned, we visited the site today." "Is that wise?" Carol asked, concern evident in her voice. "Mixing business and pleasure?" "We've talked about it," Amelia assured her. "We're being careful to keep things separate and professional when we need to be. Besides, we work well together. We have similar visions, but different skills." "Complementary," Carol noted. "That's a good foundation, darling. Just be sure to maintain your independence. Your work is too important to be overshadowed." "He feels the same way," Amelia said. "He made it very clear that he values my expertise and wants my full input, not just my endorsement of his ideas." "Then he's even smarter than I thought," Carol replied, sounding pleased. "Now, tell me more about this project. You sounded excited about it." As Amelia described the riverfront site and their plans for its transformation, she could feel her enthusiasm building again. This was the kind of project she had dreamed of working on, large-scale, environmentally significant, with the potential to change how people interacted with urban spaces. "It sounds wonderful, sweetheart," Carol said when she had finished. "Your father would be so proud of where you're taking your career." "I hope so," Amelia said softly. "He would be," Carol insisted. "And he would have liked Jackson too, I think. Your father always respected people who stood by their principles." After saying goodnight to her mother, Amelia prepared for bed, her mind still buzzing with ideas for the riverfront project and memories of the day's events. As she was about to turn off her light, her phone chimed with a message. It was from Jackson. "Just wanted to say goodnight again. I'm still thinking about today, about you." The simple message made her heart flutter like a teenager's. She typed back, "Me too. Good night, Jackson." As she drifted off to sleep, Amelia found herself thinking about how quickly life could change. 3 weeks ago, she had been focused solely on her career, returning from Seattle tired but satisfied with her professional progress. Now, she was embarking on the most exciting project of her career and falling for a man who seemed to understand her in ways no one else ever had. The laptop mix-up that had brought them together seemed less like an accident and more like serendipity with each passing day. Sometimes, Amelia thought drowsily as sleep claimed her, the most beautiful designs really were the ones you never planned. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity. Amelia met with existing clients, worked on preliminary concepts for the riverfront project, and exchanged daily texts with Jackson about both professional and personal matters. By Wednesday, she was looking forward to seeing him again at the museum exhibition. She chose her outfit carefully, a knee-length black dress that was elegant without being overly formal, paired with a statement necklace featuring a pendant made from a preserved leaf encased in resin. It had been a birthday gift from Martha the year before, and it seemed fitting to wear it tonight. Jackson picked her up promptly at 6:30, looking handsome in a tailored suit. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a smile, straightening his tie slightly. "Ready to see some sustainable design?" The museum was crowded with people dressed in fashionable attire, many of whom seemed to know Jackson. He introduced Amelia to colleagues, architects, and city officials with evident pride, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they moved through the exhibition. "Jackson Montgomery, I was hoping to see you here." They turned to find an older man approaching them, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. There was something familiar about his features, though his expression was harder than Jackson's, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Dad," Jackson said, his posture straightening almost imperceptibly. "I didn't know you were coming tonight." "Last-minute decision," the older man replied, his gaze shifting to Amelia with open curiosity. "And who is this lovely young lady?" "This is Amelia Reed," Jackson said. "She's a landscape designer who's joining the riverfront project team." "Amelia, this is my father, Richard Montgomery." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Montgomery," Amelia said, extending her hand. Richard's handshake was firm, his assessment of her swift and calculating. "Landscape designer? Interesting. I wasn't aware Jackson had made hiring decisions for that project yet." There was something in his tone that made Amelia bristle internally, though she maintained her polite smile. "Amelia is one of the most innovative designers in the field," Jackson said, his voice taking on a slight edge. "We're fortunate to have her on the team." Richard nodded, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. "Well, I look forward to seeing what you come up with, Miss Reed. The riverfront is an ambitious project." He turned back to Jackson. "Speaking of which, I'd like to discuss some of the budget projections with you. The board has concerns." "The board approved the preliminary budget last month," Jackson replied evenly. "Yes, but that was before the soil analysis came back. The remediation costs are higher than anticipated." Richard glanced at Amelia, then back to his son. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately?" Jackson hesitated, looking at Amelia. Would you excuse us for a moment? Of course, she assured him. I'll check out the water conservation exhibit. As she walked away, Amelia could feel Richard Montgomery's gaze following her. She had the distinct impression she had just been evaluated, and, in some way, found wanting. The encounter left her feeling unsettled, wondering about the dynamics between Jackson and his father that she had only heard about until now. The water conservation exhibit was fascinating, showcasing innovative systems for rainwater collection and reuse in urban settings, exactly the kind of technology she hoped to incorporate into the riverfront project. Amelia was so absorbed in studying a particular design that she didn't notice Jackson's approach until he was beside her. "I'm sorry about that," he said quietly. "No need to apologize," she assured him, though she could see the tension in his jaw. "Everything okay?" "Just the usual disagreement about direction and priorities," Jackson said with a slight shrug. "My father still thinks sustainability is a marketing buzzword, not a fundamental principle. That must be challenging." "It is, but I'm used to it." He took a deep breath, visibly releasing some of the tension. "Let's not let it ruin our evening. There's a lot more to see, and people I'd still like you to meet." The rest of the event passed pleasantly, though Amelia noticed Jackson was more reserved than usual, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. As they were preparing to leave, Richard approached them again, this time with a woman Amelia hadn't seen earlier. Tall, elegantly dressed, with a cool smile. "Jackson, you remember Elaine Prescott? Her father and I go way back. She's just returned from Paris to join her family's investment firm." The woman extended a manicured hand to Jackson. "It's been ages, Jackson. You look well." "Elaine," Jackson nodded, shaking her hand briefly. "Welcome back to the States. This is Amelia Reed." Elaine's eyes flicked to Amelia, her assessment swift and dismissive before returning to Jackson. "Your father tells me you're working on a fascinating project by the river. I'd love to hear more about it sometime." The implication was clear, and Amelia felt a flicker of something that might have been jealousy, if she allowed it to be. But Jackson's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with her own in a gesture that was both possessive and reassuring. "Amelia is actually the landscape designer for the project," he said. "Any discussion about it would need to include her expertise." Elaine's perfect smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "How collaborative of you." Richard cleared his throat. "Elaine's firm is considering new investment opportunities in sustainable development. I thought the two of you might have a lot to discuss." The matchmaking attempt was so transparent that Amelia might have found it amusing if it weren't so awkward. Jackson, however, seemed entirely unmoved by both Elaine's interest and his father's machinations. "I'm always happy to discuss potential investors," he said smoothly, "through the proper channels. If you're seriously interested, Elaine, have your firm contact our development team to arrange a presentation." With that, he made their excuses and guided Amelia toward the exit, his hand still firmly holding hers. "I apologize for my father," Jackson said, once they were in his car and pulling away from the museum. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, the only visible sign of his frustration. "He hasn't quite accepted that I run the company now. Not him." "No need to apologize," Amelia assured him, though the encounter had left her with questions. "Was Elaine—" "An old setup attempt," Jackson confirmed with a grimace. "My father and Elaine's father were college roommates. They've been trying to orchestrate a merger, both business and personal, for years." "I see," Amelia said, trying to keep her tone neutral. "She's very beautiful." Jackson glanced over at her with a small smile. "She's also calculating, superficial, and completely uninterested in anything beyond status and money. Trust me, there's no competition." The simple assurance eased the unexpected knot in Amelia's stomach. "I wasn't worried," she said, which wasn't entirely true, but was becoming more so with each passing minute. "Good." Jackson's hand found hers across the console. "Because you have absolutely no reason to be." "Your father doesn't seem to share that view," Amelia observed carefully. Jackson sighed, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. My father has very specific ideas about what kind of woman should be with a Montgomery. He married my mother because she came from the right family and knew how to host the right kind of dinner parties. He paused. They were miserable together. Divorced when I was 12. I'm sorry, Amelia said softly. Don't be. It was for the best. My mother is much happier now, living in France with a sculptor who makes her laugh. He squeezed her hand. The point is, I learned early on not to let my father dictate my personal life. His track record doesn't exactly inspire confidence. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the city lights streaking past the windows. Then Jackson spoke again, his voice lighter. Would you like to get something to eat? I know a place not far from here. Very casual, but the food is amazing. That sounds perfect, Amelia replied, grateful for the change of subject. The restaurant turned out to be a small, family-owned Mediterranean place, tucked between larger buildings. Inside, it was warm and inviting, with mosaic tiles on the walls and the scent of spices in the air. The owner greeted Jackson by name and led them to a quiet corner table. You really do know all the best hidden places in the city, Amelia commented as they settled in. One of the benefits of scouting development sites, Jackson explained with a smile. I've explored parts of this city most residents never see. Over a meal of shared small plates and excellent wine, the tension from the museum gradually dissipated. They talked about the exhibition they had seen, the ideas it had sparked for their own project, and their plans for the coming weekend. Martha invited us for dinner on Saturday, Jackson mentioned as they were finishing their meal. She claims she wants to hear about our plans for the riverfront, but I suspect she's mostly just pleased with herself for her inadvertent matchmaking. Amelia laughed. She did sound pretty smug when I spoke with her yesterday. She told me she's never been so happy to be right about something. Do you think you can tolerate an evening of her self-satisfaction? For you? I suppose I can make that sacrifice, Amelia teased, earning a warm smile from Jackson. As they left the restaurant, the spring night was cool but pleasant. On impulse, Amelia suggested they walk for a while before heading home. Jackson readily agreed, taking her hand as they strolled along the quieter side streets, admiring the historic buildings and the occasional glimpses of the river between them. I've been thinking about the water features for the riverfront, Amelia said, her mind returning to the project that was increasingly occupying her thoughts. What if we created a series of tiered rain gardens that could handle stormwater runoff, while also serving as public spaces? They could be designed to be beautiful in all seasons, not just when they're holding water. Jackson's eyes lit up with interest. That could solve multiple problems at once. The city has concerns about flood management, especially with the rivers so close. Exactly. And if we incorporate native plants that thrive in those conditions, it would support local wildlife and reduce maintenance needs. You should sketch that out, Jackson encouraged. I'm meeting with the engineering team next week to discuss water management solutions. I will, Amelia promised, already visualizing how the system might work. It would need to be integrated with the building foundations, though. The architects would need to be on board. Trust me, once they see your designs, they will be, Jackson said with such confidence in her abilities that Amelia felt a warm glow of appreciation. They walked for almost an hour, their conversation flowing easily from project ideas to childhood memories to favorite books. By the time they reached Amelia's apartment building, the earlier awkwardness of the museum encounter had been completely forgotten. At her door, Jackson pulled her close, his arms encircling her waist. Despite my father's best efforts, I had a wonderful evening, he murmured before kissing her softly. So did I, Amelia replied when they parted, her hands still resting on his chest. Will I see you tomorrow? I have meetings until late, Jackson said regretfully. But Friday? Dinner at my place? I'm not much of a cook, but I make a decent pasta. I'd like that, Amelia smiled. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, he replied, stealing one more kiss before reluctantly saying goodnight. The next day was filled with work for Amelia. She had a morning meeting with clients, followed by an afternoon of sketching concepts for the riverfront project. The rain garden idea had taken root in her mind, and she found herself completely absorbed in developing it, researching plant species that could thrive in varying water conditions and studying successful urban water management systems around the world. By evening, she had filled pages of her sketchbook with drawings and notes. Her phone chimed with a text from Jackson. "Still stuck in meetings. Can't stop thinking about your rain garden idea. Hope your day was productive." She smiled, typing back. "Very productive. Wait until you see the sketches. Hope your meetings end soon. Not soon enough. Looking forward to tomorrow night." With a contented sigh, Amelia returned to her work, adding detail to a cross-section drawing of how the rain gardens would filter and channel water during heavy rainfall. This was the part of design she loved most, solving practical problems with solutions that were not just functional, but beautiful. Friday evening arrived with a light spring rain that made the city glisten. Amelia carefully packed her preliminary sketches to show Jackson and caught a taxi to his address, a converted warehouse in a recently revitalized part of the city. The building maintained its industrial character on the outside, but the lobby was warmly lit and elegantly designed. The elevator took her to the top floor, where Jackson was waiting at the open door to his loft. He was dressed casually in jeans and a soft gray sweater, his feet bare, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Welcome," he said, leaning in to kiss her cheek before ushering her inside. The space was stunning, open and airy, with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and enormous windows overlooking the city. But what struck Amelia most was how the apartment seemed to bring the outside in. Potted trees created natural divisions between living areas, planters of herbs lined the kitchen windows, and a living wall of ferns and flowering vines covered one entire section of brick. "This is beautiful," she breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. "You didn't tell me you were such a plant enthusiast." Jackson looked slightly embarrassed. "It's a relatively new interest. I may have been inspired by a certain landscape designer to bring more life into my home." The admission was unexpectedly touching. "Well, whoever this designer is, they have excellent taste," Amelia teased, setting down her bag and portfolio. Jackson laughed, leading her further into the apartment. "Can I get you something to drink? Wine? Water? Wine would be nice." In the kitchen area, sleek and modern against the rustic backdrop of the loft, Jackson poured 2 glasses of red wine. Soft music played in the background, and Amelia noticed the dining table was already set, with candles waiting to be lit. "Something smells wonderful," she commented. "That would be Martha's lasagna recipe," Jackson admitted with a grin. "I may have exaggerated my pasta-making abilities slightly, but I did assemble it myself, and the salad is entirely my creation." "Honesty in a man is very attractive," Amelia laughed, accepting the glass he offered. "And borrowing recipes from Martha is a smart move. She's an amazing cook." "One of her many talents," Jackson agreed, raising his glass in a small toast, "to talented women who make the men in their lives look good." "I'll drink to that," Amelia smiled, clinking her glass against his. As they moved to the sofa to sit before dinner, Jackson nodded toward her portfolio. "Are those the rain garden sketches? I've been curious ever since your text." "They are," Amelia confirmed, setting down her wine and retrieving the portfolio. "Just preliminary ideas, but I think they have potential." She spread the sketches across the coffee table, explaining her concept as Jackson leaned forward with genuine interest. The system she proposed would capture rainwater from rooftops and paved areas, channeling it through a series of planted terraces that would filter pollutants before eventually returning the clean water to the river. During dry periods, the terraces would still be beautiful garden spaces where residents and visitors could gather. "This is brilliant, Amelia," Jackson said when she had finished explaining. "It's exactly the kind of integrated solution we need. May I keep these to show the engineers next week?" "Of course," she nodded, pleased by his enthusiasm. "I'd like to refine them further, But this gives you the basic concept. The basic concept is revolutionary, he insisted. This could become a model for other developments. It solves multiple problems at once: blood management, water quality, public space needs, and aesthetic appeal. His genuine appreciation for her work warmed Amelia more than the wine. In previous jobs, she had often had to fight to have her environmental concerns taken seriously. With Jackson, there was no need to convince or cajole. He already shared her values and vision. The timer in the kitchen beeped, interrupting their discussion. "That's dinner," Jackson said, reluctantly setting aside the sketches. "But I want to hear more about this later." Dinner was delicious. Martha's lasagna recipe deserved its reputation, and the conversation flowed easily from work to more personal topics. Jackson told stories about growing up with Martha, their summer adventures at the lake cabin, and the friendly academic rivalry they had maintained throughout school. Amelia shared memories of her father teaching her the names of plants on weekend nature walks, and her mother's determination to create a wildlife sanctuary in their suburban backyard. "Your parents sound wonderful," Jackson commented as they finished their meal. "I'd like to meet your mother someday." "She'd like that too," Amelia replied honestly. "She's been dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about when she might get to meet you." Jackson smiled. "Whenever you're ready for that step." No pressure. His consideration touched her. They had known each other for less than a month, yet it felt like so much longer. There was an ease between them, a natural rhythm that made everything, from professional collaboration to personal intimacy, feel right. After dinner, they moved back to the sofa with fresh glasses of wine. The rain had intensified outside, creating a cozy atmosphere as it drummed against the large windows. Jackson put on a jazz record, actual vinyl, Amelia noted with amusement, and sat close beside her. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, his arm settling around her shoulders. "Having you here makes this place feel like a home, not just somewhere I sleep between meetings." "Is that how it usually feels?" Amelia asked, leaning into his embrace. Jackson considered the question. "Yes, I suppose it is. I've never spent much time here, really. Always at the office or job sites, or traveling to meet with clients. And now I find myself looking forward to coming home," he admitted. "Especially when you're here." The simple honesty of the statement made Amelia's heart flutter. She turned to face him, finding his eyes already on her, warm with an emotion that mirrored what she was feeling. "I like being here," she said softly. "With you." Jackson's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb gently tracing her lower lip. "Amelia," he murmured, just before his lips met hers. The kiss deepened quickly, fueled by the wine and the rain, and the growing certainty between them. Amelia's hands found their way into his hair, pulling him closer as his arms encircled her waist. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. "Stay tonight," Jackson whispered against her lips, his eyes questioning, leaving the choice entirely to her. In answer, Amelia kissed him again, her decision made not in that moment, but in all the moments that had led to it. From a mistaken laptop in an airport to sketches spread across a coffee table, from tense meetings with his father to quiet walks in botanical gardens. In less than a month, Jackson Montgomery had become essential to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Later, as they lay together in his bed, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows and the rain still pattering gently outside, Amelia felt a profound sense of rightness. Jackson's arm was draped protectively over her waist, his breathing deep and even against her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly, sensing that she was still awake. Amelia turned in his arms to face him. "I'm thinking about how strange life is, how one small mix-up can change everything." "The best kind of accident," Jackson murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Though I'm starting to think it wasn't entirely accidental." "What do you mean?" "Martha mentioned you to me at least a dozen times before we met. She even suggested I contact you about the riverfront project. I was planning to, eventually." He smiled in the darkness. Perhaps the universe got tired of waiting for me to make the call. Amelia laughed softly. My mother would say it was fate. Smart woman, your mother, Jackson replied, echoing his words from their earlier dinner. They fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, the boundaries between them, professional and personal, past and future, blurring into something new and undefined, but full of promise. The next morning, Amelia woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the scent of coffee brewing. She found Jackson's robe draped at the foot of the bed and slipped it on, the soft material enveloping her in his scent as she padded barefoot to the kitchen. Jackson stood at the counter, his back to her, focused on preparing breakfast. He wore only pajama pants, and Amelia took a moment to appreciate the sight of his broad shoulders and the way the morning light played across his skin. "Good morning?" she said, her voice still husky from sleep. He turned with a smile that made her heart skip. "Good morning. I was going to surprise you with breakfast in bed." "This is a better surprise," she replied, crossing to him and rising on her tiptoes to kiss him lightly. "Coffee first, though." He laughed, pouring her a mug. "Already figured that out about you. Milk, no sugar, right?" "Perfect," she confirmed, pleased that he had noticed such a small detail. She hoisted herself onto one of the kitchen stools, watching as he returned to cooking. Eggs and toast and sliced fruit arranged on plates, with a care that touched her. "What time is dinner at Martha's tonight?" she asked, sipping her coffee. 7. But we don't have to rush. It's only a short drive from here." Jackson slid a plate in front of her, then came around the counter to sit on the stool beside her. "Any plans for today?" "I should probably go home at some point to change clothes," Amelia mused. "But otherwise, my day is open. I was thinking we could walk through the park, if you'd like. The cherry blossoms should be at their peak after all this rain." The suggestion was so perfectly aligned with her own interests that Amelia couldn't help but smile. "I'd love that." They spent a leisurely morning eating breakfast and reading the weekend paper, then showered and dressed for the day. Amelia borrowed one of Jackson's sweaters, which was comically large on her smaller frame, but comfortable in the cool morning air. The park was busy with weekend visitors, but they found a less crowded path that wound through groves of flowering trees. As Jackson had predicted, the cherry blossoms were spectacular. Clouds of pale pink against the blue spring sky. "I've always loved this time of year," Amelia said, as they walked hand in hand beneath the blossoms. "Everything feels new and possible." "It does," Jackson agreed, his expression thoughtful. "I've been meaning to ask you something, actually." "What's that?" "The riverfront project will be entering its next phase soon. We'll need to present the full concept to the city planning board and potential investors." He paused. "I'd like you to be there, as an equal partner in the presentation. Not just as a consultant, but as a co-creator of the vision." Amelia stopped walking, turning to face him. "Are you serious? That's not typically how these things work. Usually, the landscape designer is brought in after the major decisions are made." "That's exactly why our project will be different," Jackson insisted. "The integration of natural and built environments is central to the concept, not an afterthought. Your vision should be presented alongside the architectural plans, as equally important." The offer was unprecedented in Amelia's experience. In most development projects, landscape design was considered secondary, something to beautify the spaces between buildings rather than a fundamental component of the overall concept. "Jackson, I don't know what to say. That would be incredible." "Say yes," he urged, his eyes bright with excitement. "Your rain garden concept alone has changed how we're approaching the entire water management system. The architects are already adjusting their building designs to work with it." "Oh, then yes, absolutely," Amelia agreed, her professional excitement matching his. "When is the presentation?" 3 weeks from now. We have a lot of work to do before then, but I know we can create something extraordinary together." As they continued their walk, discussing ideas for the presentation and how to best communicate their shared vision, Amelia felt a sense of professional fulfillment, unlike anything she had experienced before. This was the opportunity she had been working toward her entire career, a chance to prove that sustainable landscape design could be integral to urban development, not merely decorative. By the time they reached Martha's house that evening, a charming brownstone in a historic neighborhood, Amelia was still buzzing with excitement about the upcoming presentation. Martha greeted them at the door with knowing eyes and a warm smile. "Well, don't you two look happy?" she observed, ushering them inside. "I assume the riverfront project is going well?" "Better than well," Jackson replied, helping Amelia with her coat. "Amelia's rain garden concept has revolutionized our approach to the entire development." "I'm not surprised," Martha said, leading them into a cozy living room where a fire crackled in the hearth, despite the mild spring evening. Amelia always had brilliant ideas, even as a student. She just needed the right platform for them. Dinner was delicious. Martha was indeed an excellent cook, and the conversation flowed easily among the three of them. It felt comfortable, like family, and Amelia found herself thinking how natural it seemed to be here with Jackson and his sister, as if she had always belonged at this table. As Martha served coffee and dessert, she fixed her brother with a pointed look. "So, Jackson, are you going to tell me how serious this is? Or do I have to guess?" Jackson choked slightly on his coffee, while Amelia felt heat rising to her cheeks. "Martha," Jackson admonished, though there was no real irritation in his tone. "We've known each other less than a month." "And?" Martha raised an eyebrow. "Time is a poor measure of significance. I knew within a week that Thomas was the one for me, and we were married for 32 wonderful years." Amelia hadn't known that Martha was widowed, and the information gave her a new understanding of the older woman's warmth and wisdom. It also explained the softness in her eyes when she spoke of her late husband. "We're taking things as they come," Jackson answered diplomatically, his hand finding Amelia's under the table. "But yes, it's serious." "Good," Martha nodded, satisfied. "Life's too short for anything else. Now, who wants more pie?" Later, as they drove back to the city, Amelia found herself reflecting on Martha's words. Was it too soon to think of what she and Jackson had as serious? By conventional standards, perhaps. But there was nothing conventional about how they had met, or the connection that had formed between them. "I hope Martha didn't make you uncomfortable," Jackson said, as if reading her thoughts. "She can be rather direct." "It's one of the things I've always loved about her," Amelia replied honestly. "And no, she didn't make me uncomfortable. She just made me think." Jackson glanced at her, then back at the road. "About? About time, and how we measure it. About how some connections just feel right from the beginning." Jackson's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with her own. "Like ours." "Yes," Amelia admitted softly. "Like ours." They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence, both thinking about Martha's words and the growing certainty of what they had found in each other, a partnership that transcended both their professional collaboration and their romantic involvement, becoming something neither had expected, but both now treasured. Back at Jackson's loft, as they prepared for bed, Amelia found herself studying him with new eyes, seeing not just the man she had come to care for, but the future they might build together, both literally in the riverfront project and figuratively in their personal lives. "What?" Jackson asked, catching her gaze as he turned down the bed. "Nothing," Amelia smiled. "Just thinking that sometimes the best designs really are the ones you never planned." The 3 weeks leading up to the presentation passed in a whirlwind of activity. Amelia divided her time between her existing client projects and the increasingly all-consuming riverfront development. She and Jackson established a rhythm, working separately during the days and coming together in the evenings to share ideas and refine their vision. Jackson had given her a key to his loft, and gradually Amelia found herself spending more nights there than at her own apartment. Her plants migrated one by one to his sunlit windows, and a section of his closet was cleared for her clothes. Neither made a formal decision about living together. It simply evolved naturally, another unplanned design that seemed perfectly right. 5 days before the presentation, They were working late at Jackson's loft, surrounded by architectural drawings, plant lists, and material samples. The dining table had disappeared beneath their shared work, and they had ordered takeout that now sat half-forgotten as they focused on finalizing details. "The city council is concerned about maintenance costs for the rain gardens," Jackson said, reviewing notes from his meeting that afternoon. "They like the concept, but worry about long-term care." Amelia looked up from her laptop, where she had been calculating water filtration rates. That's actually one of the strengths of the system. Using native plants dramatically reduces maintenance needs. They're adapted to local conditions and form self-sustaining ecosystems once established. Can you put together some comparative cost projections? Traditional landscaping versus the rain garden system over a 20-year period? "Already working on it," Amelia nodded, turning her laptop to show him the spreadsheet she had created. "Even with initial establishment costs, we break even in year 3 and save significantly after that, especially when you factor in the reduced stormwater management infrastructure needed elsewhere." Jackson studied the numbers, then looked up at her with admiration. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," Amelia admitted. "I'm still trying to figure out how to incorporate winter interest in the gardens. They'll be beautiful spring through fall, but I don't want them to look barren in winter." "What about sculptural elements?" Jackson suggested. "Not traditional sculpture, but natural materials, stone arrangements, architectural grasses that maintain their form through winter, maybe some artistic lighting?" Amelia's eyes lit up. "That could work perfectly. The lighting could be solar-powered, with fixtures designed to complement the natural elements." They continued working late into the night, their creative energy feeding off each other. It was past midnight when Jackson finally insisted they get some rest. "We won't be any good to this project if we're exhausted," he said, gently closing Amelia's laptop despite her protests. "The presentation is important, but so is your health." "Just one more hour," Amelia bargained, stifling a yawn that undermined her argument. "Bed," Jackson insisted, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "The ideas will still be there in the morning. Probably better ones, after you've rested." She relented, allowing him to lead her to the bedroom. As they settled under the covers, Amelia's mind was still racing with design concepts and presentation strategies. "I can hear you thinking," Jackson murmured, his arm draped over her waist. "Sorry," she whispered. "I just want this to be perfect. It's such an important opportunity, not just for us, but for changing how people think about urban development." Jackson pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It will be, because it's not just a project for either of us anymore. It's a vision we both believe in." The simple truth of his words helped quiet her restless mind, and Amelia drifted off to sleep, feeling both excited and strangely peaceful about what lay ahead. The morning of the presentation arrived with clear skies and unusually warm spring temperatures. Amelia woke early, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Jackson, and made coffee before reviewing her notes one last time. When Jackson joined her an hour later, freshly showered and looking unfairly handsome in just his suit pants and undershirt, he found her surrounded by index cards and sketches. "How long have you been up?" he asked, pouring himself coffee. "Not long," Amelia replied unconvincingly. "Just wanted to make sure I have everything straight in my head." Jackson smiled knowingly, but didn't comment on the obvious lie. Instead, he sat beside her at the counter, reviewing his own part of the presentation while they shared a quiet breakfast. "Are you nervous?" Amelia asked as they prepared to leave, straightening his tie with hands that weren't entirely steady. "About the presentation?" "No," Jackson said confidently. "About my father being there and potentially causing problems? A little." Richard Montgomery had confirmed his attendance the day before, along with several board members from Montgomery's Sustainable Developments. Amelia knew Jackson was concerned about his father's potential opposition, though he had tried to downplay it. "We'll win them over," she assured him. "The concept is sound, the financials make sense, and the environmental benefits are undeniable. Even your father can't argue with good business." Jackson's expression softened as he looked at her. Have I told you lately how remarkable you are? Not since yesterday, Amelia teased, trying to lighten the mood, but I don't mind hearing it again. You're remarkable, he said seriously, taking her face in his hands, and not just for your brilliant designs, for your passion, your integrity, and for believing in this project as much as I do. He kissed her then, a kiss that somehow conveyed both his gratitude and his apprehension about the day ahead. When they parted, Amelia straightened her shoulders, determination replacing her earlier nervousness. "Let's go change the future of urban development," she said with more confidence than she felt. The presentation was scheduled for 10 o'clock at City Hall, in the main chamber where the Planning Commission met. When they arrived, the room was already filling with city officials, potential investors, community representatives, and members of the press. Jackson's team had arranged the space with display boards showing renderings of the project, material samples, and a scale model of the development at the center. As they set up their digital presentation, Amelia spotted Richard Montgomery entering with a group of well-dressed men and women she assumed were board members. His expression was unreadable as he nodded curtly to his son, his eyes passing over Amelia without acknowledgement. "Don't let him get to you," Jackson murmured, noticing her gaze. "He's here because he has to be, not because he supports the vision." Before Amelia could respond, the Planning Commission chairwoman called the meeting to order, and they took their places at the presentation table. Jackson would speak first, introducing the overall concept and the business case, followed by the lead architect. Amelia would present the landscape and water management system, which had evolved to become a central element of the entire development. Jackson stood and approached the podium with the confident ease of someone accustomed to such presentations. "Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. What we're presenting isn't just another development project. It's a new model for how cities can grow while honoring their natural environments." His voice was clear and passionate as he outlined the vision for the riverfront, a mixed-use development that would transform the abandoned industrial site into a vibrant community while respecting and enhancing the natural ecosystem. The business case he presented was compelling, showing how the sustainable elements would yield long-term cost savings and create a unique market position that justified premium pricing. Throughout his presentation, Amelia watched the reactions of the audience. Most seemed engaged and interested, though Richard Montgomery remained stone-faced, occasionally whispering to the board member beside him. The city officials, particularly those from the environmental department, were nodding approvingly at the pollution remediation plans and reduced carbon footprint projections. The lead architect followed with detailed building designs that incorporated green roofs, passive solar heating, and natural ventilation systems. Then it was Amelia's turn. Taking a deep breath, she stood and moved to the front of the room. Her initial nervousness faded as she began speaking about the landscape design and water management system that had become her passion over the past weeks. Traditional development treats landscaping as decoration and stormwater as a problem to be hidden away in pipes, she began. The riverfront project takes a fundamentally different approach. Here, the landscape isn't just what happens between buildings. It's an integral functional system that manages water, creates habitat, reduces energy costs, and enhances quality of life. Using the digital presentation and physical models, Amelia walked the audience through the rain garden concept, showing how it would capture and filter stormwater through a series of beautiful planted terraces before returning clean water to the river. She explained how the plant selections would create year-round interest while supporting local wildlife and requiring minimal maintenance once established. "This isn't just aesthetically pleasing," she emphasized, highlighting the cost projections Jackson had requested. "It's fiscally responsible. Over 20 years, this system will save an estimated $2 million in maintenance and infrastructure costs compared to conventional approaches." As she concluded her portion of the presentation, Amelia noticed something surprising. Richard Montgomery was leaning forward, his earlier dismissive expression replaced by what appeared to be genuine interest. When she returned to her seat beside Jackson, he squeezed her hand under the table. "You were brilliant," he whispered. "Even my father was paying attention." The final portion of the presentation addressed community benefits, affordable housing units, public spaces, job creation, and educational opportunities related to sustainable practices. Then, the floor was opened for questions. The first came from a city council member. "This all sounds impressive, but these innovative systems often fail in real-world applications. How can you ensure the rain gardens will perform as promised?" Amelia was ready for this. "We've based our designs on existing successful systems in similar climates, but scaled up. We're also proposing a phased implementation with monitoring periods between phases, allowing for adjustments if needed. Additionally, we've budgeted for the first 3 years of maintenance to ensure proper establishment." More questions followed, about financing, construction timelines, impact on neighboring properties, and potential job creation. Jackson and Amelia tag-teamed the responses, their complementary knowledge creating comprehensive answers that seemed to satisfy the questioners. Then Richard Montgomery stood. The room quieted, aware of his status not just as a board member, but as the founder of Montgomery Sustainable Developments. "I have concerns about the financial viability of this project," he stated flatly. "While the presentation is certainly creative, the return on investment projections seem optimistic at best, fantastical at worst." Jackson tensed beside Amelia, but his voice remained steady as he responded. "The financial projections are based on comparable developments in other cities, adjusted for our market. They've been vetted by 3 independent analysts, all of whom concluded the premium pricing is sustainable given the unique features and location. Those comparable developments don't exist," Richard countered. "Nothing of this scale has attempted to integrate environmental systems so thoroughly. It's unprecedented, which makes it risky." "With respect," Amelia found herself saying before she could reconsider, "unprecedented isn't synonymous with risky. It's synonymous with innovative. Every significant advance in any industry started as unprecedented." Richard's gaze shifted to her, his expression hard. "And you are qualified to speak on real estate development finance because Miss Reed has spent the past month analyzing every aspect of this project's economic and environmental impact," Jackson interjected, his tone cooling. "Her expertise in sustainable systems is precisely why the financial projections are sound, because they account for long-term savings that conventional analyses miss." The tension in the room was palpable. Then, unexpectedly, one of the other board members spoke up. "Richard, I've reviewed the numbers myself, and they're solid. More importantly, they align with market trends. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword anymore. It's driving purchasing decisions, particularly in the luxury segment we target." Several city officials nodded in agreement, and one added, "The water management system alone would save the city significant infrastructure costs downstream." From the public sector perspective, this is exactly the kind of development we want to encourage. The discussion continued, with most comments increasingly supportive. By the time the meeting concluded, the Planning Commission chairwoman was smiling broadly. "Thank you for this comprehensive presentation. The Commission will need to review all materials and deliberate. But, speaking personally, I find this vision for the riverfront compelling and thoughtfully developed. We'll have our decision within 2 weeks." As people began to file out, several stopped to compliment Amelia on the landscape design and water management system. The city's environmental director handed her his card, asking if she would be willing to consult on other municipal projects. A reporter requested an interview about the rain garden concept for a feature on urban sustainability. Through it all, Amelia was acutely aware of Jackson beside her, professionally fielding questions while occasionally glancing at her with undisguised pride. They were a team, their separate expertise creating something neither could have achieved alone. Richard Montgomery approached as the crowd thinned, his expression unreadable. "Interesting presentation," he said to Jackson, deliberately ignoring Amelia. Bold, certainly. Perhaps too bold. The board seemed to disagree with you, Jackson replied evenly. Even your most conservative allies saw the potential. The board is easily swayed by trends, Richard dismissed. I'm concerned with long-term company stability. As am I, Jackson countered. Which is precisely why this project matters. The future of development isn't in ignoring environmental realities, but in working with them. The sooner we position ourselves at the forefront of that shift, the more stable our long-term outlook. Richard's gaze finally shifted to Amelia, assessing her with cool calculation. Your rain garden concept is intriguing, Miss Reed. Unproven at this scale, but intriguing. I assume you have case studies to support your maintenance cost projections? Several, Amelia confirmed, meeting his gaze steadily. I'd be happy to share them with you. A flicker of surprise crossed Richard's face, perhaps at her confidence or her willingness to engage directly. Send them to my office. I'll have my team review them. With that, he nodded curtly and walked away, leaving Amelia and Jackson alone at the presentation table. Did your father just almost give me a compliment? Amelia asked incredulously. Jackson looked equally stunned. I believe he did. In Richard Montgomery terms, intriguing is high praise from an initial skeptic. They gathered their materials in companionable silence, both processing the events of the morning. As they loaded the last of the display boards into Jackson's car, he turned to her with a smile that made her heart skip. Lunch? I think we've earned it. Definitely, Amelia agreed, suddenly aware of how drained she felt now that the adrenaline was fading. Somewhere quiet, though. I need to decompress. They found a small cafe with an outdoor patio, secluded enough to offer privacy, but still bathed in the warm spring sunshine. After ordering, Jackson reached across the table for her hand. You were amazing today, he said simply. The way you handled those questions, especially from my father. I couldn't be prouder to have you as my partner in this. It felt right, Amelia admitted, standing there, presenting our shared vision. Even with the tough questions, I knew we had created something worthwhile. We did, Jackson agreed, and regardless of the commission's decision, though I'm optimistic, this is just the beginning. The beginning of what? His eyes held hers, serious and certain. Of changing how development happens in this city, of creating spaces that honor both human needs and natural systems. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. And of us, building something important together. The simple statement carried the weight of promise, of a future unfolding before them that neither had anticipated, but both now embraced. Amelia felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, hope, and something deeper that she wasn't quite ready to name, but recognized with growing certainty. Their food arrived, temporarily breaking the moment, but the connection between them remained, stronger than ever as they discussed the presentation and the promising reactions it had received. As they were finishing lunch, Jackson's phone chimed with a message. He checked it, his eyebrows rising in surprise. It's from a board member, Elaine's father, actually. He says he's impressed with the presentation and wants to discuss additional investment opportunities for sustainable projects. Apparently, several of the investors present today have expressed similar interest. That's wonderful, Amelia exclaimed. So even if this specific project isn't approved, the door is open for others like it. Jackson completed her thought. Exactly. His phone chimed again, and his expression shifted to one of disbelief as he read the message. What is it? Amelia asked. It's from my father, Jackson said slowly. He wants to meet for dinner tonight to discuss the project further. He says, and I'm quoting directly, Miss Reed's presence would be appropriate, as her expertise seems central to the concept. Amelia nearly choked on her water. Your father is inviting me to dinner? To discuss the project professionally? Apparently, Jackson confirmed, looking as stunned as she felt. Should I accept? Amelia considered for a moment. Her initial instinct was to avoid another potentially uncomfortable encounter with Richard Montgomery. But professionally, this was an important opportunity. And personally, it signified something significant, a reluctant acknowledgement of her role in Jackson's life and work. Yes, she decided, we should go. That evening, they met Richard at an upscale steakhouse known as a favored meeting place for business discussions. He was already seated when they arrived, nursing what appeared to be a scotch on the rocks. He stood as they approached, offering Jackson a firm handshake and Amelia a stiff nod. "Thank you for joining me," he said as they took their seats. "I wanted to discuss the riverfront project further, now that the public presentation is complete." The waiter appeared to take their drink orders, providing a brief respite from the tension. Once he departed, Richard fixed his gaze on Jackson. "The board is enthusiastic," he stated without preamble. "More enthusiastic than I anticipated. Several members are interested in increasing their investment stakes." "That's good news," Jackson replied cautiously, clearly waiting for the other shoe to drop. "It is," Richard agreed. "But enthusiasm doesn't negate risk. The project remains unprecedented in our portfolio. All innovation carries risk," Amelia pointed out. "The question is whether the potential rewards justify it." Richard's attention shifted to her, his expression analytical rather than dismissive. "A fair point, Miss Reed. And what would you say those rewards are, beyond the obvious financial projections?" It was a test, Amelia realized, not just of her knowledge, but of her commitment to the vision she and Jackson shared. "Market differentiation, for one," she began confidently. "The riverfront would establish Montgomery Sustainable Developments as a true leader in environmental design, not just another company using green as a marketing term. That positioning has long-term value beyond this single project." She continued, outlining how the innovative approaches they were proposing could be refined and scaled for future developments, creating intellectual property with significant value. She explained how the relationships with city officials and environmental groups would ease approvals for subsequent projects. And finally, she addressed the legacy aspect, how the riverfront could become a case study in sustainable development, ensuring the Montgomery name was associated with positive environmental impact for generations. Throughout her explanation, Richard listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking pointed questions that Amelia answered with growing confidence. Jackson remained largely silent, watching the exchange with a mixture of pride and amazement. When she concluded, Richard sat back, swirling the remaining scotch in his glass. "You make a compelling case, Miss Reed. Not the one I expected, but compelling nonetheless." "What did you expect?" she asked, genuinely curious. "An environmental idealist's argument," he admitted. "Full of good intentions but light on business realities. Instead, you've presented a strategic business case that happens to have environmental benefits. The two aren't mutually exclusive," Amelia pointed out. "That's rather the entire point of the project." For the first time that evening, Richard's expression softened slightly, a hint of respect replacing his usual skepticism. "Indeed," he turned to Jackson. "You've found a formidable partner, it seems." "In every sense," Jackson agreed, his hand finding Amelia's beneath the table. The rest of the dinner proceeded with surprising civility. Richard shared insights from his decades in development, some of which Amelia found genuinely valuable, despite disagreeing with his overall approach. Jackson outlined next steps for the project, assuming Planning Commission approval. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had evolved from tense negotiation to something approaching collegial discussion. As they prepared to leave, Richard fixed his son with an unexpectedly earnest gaze. "Your mother called me yesterday. She's planning to visit next month and wants to meet Miss Reed." He glanced at Amelia. "Apparently, Martha has been singing your praises." Jackson looked surprised but pleased. "I didn't know you and Mom were in regular contact." "We're not," Richard admitted, "but she keeps tabs on you through Martha, and she's curious about this development." He left ambiguous whether he meant the riverfront project or Jackson's relationship with Amelia. "I'd be happy to meet her," Amelia said sincerely. Richard nodded, then extended his hand to her, the first time he had offered such a gesture. I still have reservations about certain aspects of the project, but I recognize quality work when I see it. Your rain garden concept, in particular, merits further exploration. Coming from Richard Montgomery, it was tantamount to enthusiastic endorsement. Amelia shook his hand firmly, meeting his gaze with quiet confidence. Thank you. I look forward to proving its value in practice. Outside the restaurant, as they waited for the valet to bring their car, Jackson pulled Amelia close, his expression a mixture of disbelief and joy. Do you realize what just happened? He asked. My father not only approved of your work, he practically gave us his blessing, professionally and personally. I noticed that, Amelia smiled, though I'm not sure which surprised him more, that your girlfriend is a landscape designer, or that she understands business strategy. Both, probably, Jackson laughed. You continue to defy everyone's expectations, Amelia Reed, including mine. 2 weeks later, they received official notice that the Planning Commission had approved the riverfront project. The celebration at Jackson's loft, now unofficially their shared home, lasted well into the night, with Martha, Dennis, and key team members toasting their success and the beginning of what everyone agreed would be a transformative development for the city. As the last guests departed, Amelia and Jackson stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. In the distance, they could just make out the dark outline of the riverfront, where their shared vision would soon take shape. We did it, Amelia said softly, leaning into Jackson's embrace. It's really happening. Thanks to you, he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Your rain gardens won them over. The environmental director told me it was the deciding factor for several committee members. Thanks to us, she corrected. Neither of us could have done this alone. Jackson turned her in his arms, his expression suddenly serious. That's true of more than just the project, you know. These past 2 months, you've changed everything, Amelia. How I see my work, my future, myself. You've changed things for me, too, she admitted. I've always been passionate about my designs, but you've helped me see how they can have impact on a larger scale. We're good together, Jackson said simply. In every way. We are, Amelia agreed, her heart full with the certainty of it. Jackson took a deep breath, as if gathering courage for what he wanted to say next. I know it hasn't been long by conventional standards, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. I had planned to wait, to do this properly with some grand romantic gesture. But standing here, celebrating what we've accomplished together, it feels right to ask now. Amelia's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a ring with a single emerald surrounded by smaller diamonds, elegant, distinctive, and perfectly suited to her taste. Amelia Reed, Jackson said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? Not just because I love you, though I do completely, but because together we create something better than either of us could alone. Because every day with you makes me want to be better. A better developer, a better steward of the environment, a better man. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, not from surprise, but from the overwhelming rightness of the moment. In less than 2 months, this man had gone from a stranger, an accidental connection in an airport, to the person she couldn't imagine her life without. Yes, she said simply, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, Jackson Montgomery. I will marry you, as he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise. Amelia thought about all the twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. A mixed-up laptop, a lost USB drive, a sister's recommendation, a shared vision for a better way to build. None of it planned, all of it perfect in its own way. Later that night, as they lay together in the darkness, making plans for both the riverfront project and their future together, Amelia remembered something her mother had said during their first conversation about Jackson. Those kinds of coincidences don't just happen. Perhaps Carol Reed had been right all along. Perhaps some designs, like some loves, are meant to unfold in their own perfect, unplanned way. surprising and inevitable all at once. As Jackson's breathing deepened beside her, his arm protective around her waist even in sleep, Amelia gazed at the emerald ring catching moonlight from the window. It symbolized not just their love, but their shared vision. Beauty and sustainability intertwined. Natural and human elements in perfect balance. The riverfront project would be their first creation together, but Amelia knew with absolute certainty that it wouldn't be their last. Together, they would continue to transform spaces and lives, proving with each new project that the most beautiful designs are often the ones that grow naturally from unexpected beginnings. Just like their love had grown from a simple mix-up of laptops in an airport, an accident that, in retrospect, felt like the most perfect design of all.